Welcome on in, Eagles fans, to episode 24 of the No-Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast on NJ.com. This one, the first podcast, the first episode since the end of the 2015 season. The Eagles finished 7-9, but what they did in their last game doesn't matter. It's what they do now moving forward, looking for a new head coach and looking to put this franchise back on track. I'm Joe Giglio. With me, as always, Elliot Shore-Parks and Mark Eckel. And now, we talked a lot all season long about this team and about Chip, and now we have a whole bunch of new things to talk about. Most importantly right now, Elliot, a coaching search, which the Eagles are doing for the first time since bringing in Chip. And this one, just so far, we're doing this podcast on a Tuesday morning. There's so many names that we've heard just in less than a week since Chip left.
Yeah, I'm just excited for the Eagles' playoff game this weekend, They looked really good in Green Bay to start. Obviously, Bradford ended up being the guy we thought. So it all worked out. So, just exciting to be back in the playoffs. Oh, wait, never mind. That's not what happened at all. So, back to the coaching search, I guess. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be.
I know a guy. He was really good as a head coach in college. And he went 26-21 in 3 years in the NFL. That's not bad, right? That's a pretty good resume. Name's Kelly, I think.
We should just rename this the Chip Kelly podcast because the support for him has been strong.
No, I'm kidding. There is a common theme, I think, among the quote unquote, likely candidates and the guys they've interviewed so far and plan interview. They all seem to be quarterback driven.
Yes.
Even Pat Shurmur, their in-house candidate, quarterback guy. Adam Gase, known for working with quarterbacks. Dirk Cotter, who supposedly is on their radar, very good with quarterbacks. Matt Ryan, now Jameis Winston. Doug Peterson, who I'm told is an leading candidate but could be a fallback option. Former NFL quarterback, worked with quarterbacks. So obviously, in the back of the Eagles' mind, whether it's Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, both of them together, they seem to be looking toward getting a guy that can groom a young quarterback. Maybe I'm adding up to the 2 and 2 and coming up with 5, but that's what it seems to me anyway.
Or at least get the most out of whatever quarterback they have, right? Like if they do keep Bradford, like you said, Mark, or if they get a young quarterback. For you, each of you guys, we'll go to Elliot and then Mark on this. What would be the biggest criteria or the first question you would ask some of these guys? If you're Lurie and you're sitting in that room after what just happened with Kelly, whether or not he should have fired him or not, he did and he moved on. What do you think they should be looking for here besides, the blanket statement of just saying a good football coach? What's something you think the Eagles need here, just all things considered?
Yeah, Mark just touched on it. And to me, far and away, the number one quality you want in a head coach is his ability to find a quarterback and develop that quarterback. Not to keep harping on Chip, but one of the main reasons I think he was never more successful than he was during his time was he never got a quarterback. You can look around the NFL. Teams that don't have good quarterbacks just generally don't win. They don't make the playoffs. So if I'm this new head coach has to be able to either find a quarterback in the draft and develop that guy, have another guy in mind in terms of a free agent, or if he really likes Bradford, he needs to sell the Eagles on how he's going to take Bradford to the next level and have him build upon his success of these past few games. But without a doubt, the number one quality they need from their head coach is an offensive guy who can find the quarterback. So with a guy like Sean McDermott, yes, certainly the Eagles defense needs help, and he showed in Carolina he can build a strong defense. Although I think Ron Rivera had a lot to do with that. I think it's a little bit like saying you want Pat Shurmur as your head coach because the Eagles offense is good. Maybe not quite as strong, but along those same lines. But absolutely, in terms of what the Eagles need, they need somebody that can come in here and find the quarterback.
Well, I think I agree with everything you just said, Elliot, but I think the two questions you have to ask the coach first is, how open is your heart? and if I have a Christmas party on Monday, can you come?
Yeah, a holiday party.
Chip got fired over. Holiday party. Because apparently that's two of the main reasons Chip got fired. His heart wasn't open, and he blew off the Christmas party. So, no, all kidding aside, and maybe I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Hey, Lurie said an open heart in the interview. So
I feel like maybe that just goes with everything else. If your heart is open, you'll find a way to make the party on a Monday or whatever date it is.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, maybe heart and heart. No, I mean, quarterback, like you said, and then let's just look at the Eagles' history. Forget the rest of the league. Andy Reid, for all, like him, hate him, whatever you think of him, he got a little lucky with Donovan McNabb. I mean, that's why that's why the Eagles, say what you want about Reid and the front office. They had Donovan McNabb, who's the best quarterback in franchise history for all those years. And that's as much as the reason they were successful. When Donovan started to wane and when he wasn't as good as he once was, that's when the team started to fall. And then they traded him, and they haven't gotten anybody like him since, and they haven't won a playoff game since. I mean, they had Vic, a brief kind of past his prime Vic, Foles for 10 minutes of looking good, but they haven't had that. And so, that's, if the Cleveland Browns would have taken Donovan with that first pick, who's to say Andy Reid would have probably lasted 4 years with Tim Couchers or whoever the Eagles would have taken second. So, that is so important. And there are ways of doing it. You can draft the guy, then, like the Eagles did with Donovan. You can do what Andy did in Kansas City and go out and get Alex Smith. I'll give Andy credit for that. He understands it. He knows you have when he got to Kansas City, he said, none of these quarterbacks are the guy. It wasn't a quarterback draft that year. And Alex Smith, say what you want about him, he's in the playoffs again. So, that's the guy that he wanted, and it somewhat worked out for him. So, you have to, and I'll go way back to Ray. Excuse me, when Ray Rhodes first got here, way back in was it '95, he made a trade for Mark Brunell. The Eagles never got the contract done with Mark Brunell, so Green Bay traded him to Jacksonville instead. And who knows how different the whole world would have been if or the football world anyway, if the Eagles would have gotten Mark Brunell, because that Eagle team that Ray had was pretty good, except for quarterback. They had Ricky Waters, they had Irving Fryer at receiver, they had a real good defense, but all those defensive guys that Andy won with were all Ray's guys, Trotter and Hugh Douglas and Troy Vincent and Brian Dawkins, Bobby Taylor, they were all there, but they had Bobby Hoying and the Detmer brothers. They didn't have, a Mark Brunell who went to a lot of Pro Bowls with the Jaguars could have made a big, big difference here. So you got to find that guy. You got to find your Mark Brunell or your Alex Smith or your Donovan McNabb.
It's interesting. It's ironic, too, as you say that, Mark, as the same week Tom Coughlin resigns from the Giants, a lot of his career was made with Mark Brunell as his quarterback at Jacksonville. Who knows what his career would have been if he didn't then land Brunell. So you're right. It's all about the quarterback. You guys are both right. Whatever this coach is, whoever this coach is, they have to find their quarterback. How about, there's a lot of conversation about what the Eagles need here in terms of what kind of coach. One that's experienced, has NFL experience, one that has just been an assistant. Do you think that stuff matters here, Elliot? I know Lurie last week, said he's open to everything, just finding the best candidate. Do you think they'd lean more towards a guy that has been a head coach, or do you think that doesn't matter if they like someone that's just a coordinator or just a position coach?
Well, Lurie said at the press conference that hiring Chip, who obviously was out of college and had no NFL head coaching experience, and doing the things he did with Chip isn't going to stop him from taking another risk. That the worst thing he would ever want to be is afraid of taking big chances. So in some ways, I do think that if they find the right guy, it's not going to matter what his resume is. That being said, I don't think they're going to be searching the college ranks for a head coach. I think they're going to look for someone who does have head coaching experience. And if you look at some of the guys that they've been linked to, they don't, and Adam Gase does not. But, Pat Shurmur, they interviewed, who obviously has head coaching experience. But I do think they want someone that's more, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. They want someone that's done it before, that's used to running a locker room, that's used to dealing with the NFL players. Because I do think that's where Chip went wrong in their eyes. So I don't think they don't want to bring someone in here who they're not sure how he's going to be able to handle that. And that way, I do think they want someone that's done it before. But the problem with that is, and at least in my opinion, is I'm not a big fan of the retread NFL coach. I think, I want someone that's going to come in here that's going to be young, motivated, that, like Pat Shurmur, yeah, he coached well this past Sunday. Not that the game meant anything. But what he is. Sean Payton's a bit of a different story in a lot of ways. I think that would be a good hire. But I would prefer them to go in the direction of a young, up-and-coming guy. Now, whether they'll go that way, I don't know. Because, like I said, I do think they want someone that has quite a bit of experience.
That's not Lurie's style. He's hired 3 head coaches, and none of them were ever a head coach anywhere before. He hired Ray Rhodes, who was a defensive coordinator. He hired Andy, who wasn't even a coordinator. And then he hired Chip, who was a head coach but never had no NFL experience. So that would go against Lurie's past performance. And I think more importantly, You're not getting any of those guys. You're not getting Sean Payton. Sean Payton's not coming here to work with Howie Roseman, please. I don't mean that way. I mean, Sean Payton, I didn't mean that as a direct knock at Howie, but I mean, he's not going, Sean Payton's going to want total control. And I don't blame him. He's won a Super Bowl. He's earned that right. He's earned the right to go wherever he goes to be the guy in control of everything. And that's not the case here. Here you have, whoever they hire is going to be the head coach. I mean, I don't think Jeffrey's going to move Howie back to the closet again and give Sean Payton total control. So they're not getting anyone like that. They're not getting, I don't know who they're going to get. They're going to get a guy that just wants to be a head coach. They're going to get a young assistant who's, clamoring to be one of 32 people in the world.
And that's kind of the question with this is like, there are a lot of.
I'm not saying that's the wrong way to go. Andy Reid, was a nobody when they hired him. He wasn't even a coordinator. Let's go back to that. He was not a coordinator. Never called a play in his life until he got it.
And see that's kind of like the question here with the job is, are they? I mean, there's a tons of openings now. Are the Eagles going to be able to get their top guy? I mean, I know we've talked about this, Mark. Like, where does this job fall in terms of the jobs out there? I mean, the Giants' job is probably better. I mean, me and you would argue the Titans' job is better because of Mariota.
And the first pick.
And their first overall pick. And, the presence of Howie is going to be an issue for some people because, let's face reality here, we all saw what happened with Chip. I mean, if Howie and Chip get along, Chip's probably still here. So if you're a head coach, you're coming into the situation, you're not going to have – not only you're not going to have control over personnel, the guy who's going to have control is already there. So you don't even get to have some say as to who you're going to be working with. And I think it's pretty clear that if this next head coach comes in and in 3 years is a failure, I mean, he's getting the blame. I don't think there's going to be a situation where Howie's ever going to get fired. I think Lurie believes in Howie, and you can certainly make some arguments as to why he should, I guess. But
give me one.
I'd have to go back and look. That 2012 draft everyone talks about, which –
next podcast, we can have that. We can make that the theme.
Yeah, the Howie Roseman hour.
But why Howie Roseman's good.
Yeah, but I guess my point is that if I'm a new head coach, I'm weary of coming into this situation. We know who's running the show, and that's Howie. We know that the locker room just turned on Chip hard, and we know that that's obviously going to be a factor. So if you're a new head coach, you're not exactly coming into a super, I don't want to say friendly, but not toxic, but it's certainly not a great situation to walk into.
Elliot, if you've been an assistant for 10 years, not 8 years, like I said, there's only 32 of these things. And
agreed, but right now there's about 7 or 8 of them, and if you're the top guy,
there's not. Tell me who's open. They're all closing. The best thing that happened to the Eagles was San Diego says they're keeping McCoy. The Colts just re-signed Chuck Pagano. What's open? You got the Giants, the Eagles, the 49ers, Miami, and Tennessee.
All right, and maybe
and Cleveland. So there's six openings.
Cleveland, I didn't put Cleveland there because the Eagles are better than Cleveland.
But my point is, all those teams you just mentioned, where would you put the Eagles? So maybe they're not the worst, but
it's not. We thought there was going to be 10. We thought Indianapolis was definitely going to open, and that would be very attractive because you have Andrew Luck. Well, that's not open anymore. I thought San Diego would be attractive because, well, it's San Diego. You get to live in San Diego, and you got Philip Rivers. So, but that's not open. So 2 very desirable openings didn't open. So the Eagles moved up.
But how many quality candidates do you think there are?
Well, I don't know. I mean, depending on what your definition of quality. Sean McDermott quality, I think he is.
I guess my point is, let's say the Eagles' top candidate is Adam Gase. Let's say that, right? They're interviewing him first, whatever. They like the way he developed quarterbacks, etc. If you're Adam Gase, you're probably on the top of a lot of teams' lists, or near the top.
Miami and Cleveland are the only other teams that have asked to talk to him.
As of right now.
He's not.
Right, well, where would you put the Eagles' job?
I'd put it behind. I mean, the Giants are number 1.
Agreed.
It's New York. Let's be honest. It's New York. That's number 1 right there. And it's the Giants, very stable ownership, very good general manager, and Jerry Reese, even though the Giants fans don't realize that. You got Eli Manning, at least for a couple more years, 1, 2 Super Bowls. Yeah, the Giants are 1. I think Tennessee is 2 because I love Mariota. Everybody knows I love Mariota.
Right.
So that would be 2.
San Francisco.
You got to like Colin Kaepernick. If you're a guy that thinks Colin Kaepernick's done, then they're no better than the Eagles because they don't have a quarterback then.
If you like him, then they're ahead of the Eagles.
If you like Kaepernick, then they're ahead of the Eagles. If you don't like, but I think it's a 50-50 split on whether you like Kaepernick or not, right?
But you can get rid of Kaepernick.
Yeah, but then you don't have a quarterback. Then you're the Eagles.
Right. So I'm saying, all right, how about this? Let's phrase this another way.
Yeah.
What's attractive about the Eagles' job?
That's a great question.
Big city, easy division. I mean, the Eagles have an easy right now. No matter who they hire, they have a better chance of winning the NFC East next year than the Niners have of winning the NFC West next year.
That's true. Right. That's because the team's out there. I think the interesting part about the Eagles and what's a good thing about them, or what's a pro of their job right now is. So, Mark, you mentioned the Giants.
Giants are number one.
Right.
Tennessee's number two, and then I think Eagles, Miami, San Fran, depending on what you like. I think they're all. I think Cleveland's at the bottom. Of
the 6 openings, including the Eagles, and I guess there could be a 7th as we move along. If
could trade Sean Payton too, but then that would close one opening and open another.
Right. So 6 openings. At this point, of them, 4 of them you could have the quarterback there if you really want him. Like the Giants are going to have Eli. Tannehill is locked into Miami. The Niners have Kaepernick under contract. Whether or not he's done or not. And obviously Mariota. Now Johnny Manziel is a mess in Cleveland, so they don't have a quarterback. But even if you like Bradford, I think part of the pro, but it could also be a con with the Eagles is he could walk away. Like he's not
you could franchise him.
You could franchise him, sure.
Yeah, and then sign nobody else because you're giving him $20-some million on a $20 million, and the cap hit is $20-some million. So you're losing all your free agents, and you're not signing anybody else if you're franchised.
It'll be hard. Even if you like Bradford, you can't guarantee he's going to be there.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how much Bradford plays a role, and we might never know, but how much Bradford plays a role in their coaching search. I mean, if when you talk to a guy, are you gonna bring someone in who likes Bradford, or is that even a discussion?
Nope.
Like,
I think it's just the opposite. I think the Eagles organization has already made up their mind that they're moving on from unless Bradford agrees to a real hometown, and that's not even his hometown, but a real discount to stay. I think they've decided that they're not paying top dollar for Sam Bradford.
I agree.
And so that's why they're looking at quarterback coaches like Adam Gase and Dirk Cutter and maybe Doug Marrone and whoever, maybe even Pat Shurmur to say, okay, tell me who we can bring in, or how much do you like one of these college guys, or how are we going to do this?
Which makes this whole thing fascinating now because, they're a team without a quarterback that might have to hope and get a quarterback. And do you think that rules out, defensive guys, or do you think they'll be open to that too as long as they bring along a good offense coordinator like Sean McDermott, who's a very popular name to talk about? He's a former Eagle defensive coordinator. He's having a very nice year, obviously a nice 4 years with the Carolina Panthers. Do you think that puts him behind the 8 ball a little bit, Elliot, because it's so important they develop a quarterback and that he's the opposite side of the ball?
Right. I mean, unless he has an offensive coordinator he knows will come with him that's very well respected. I mean, then maybe, but I agree. I mean, hiring a defensive coach is a risk just because, as we just talked about, the importance of the quarterback. So that obviously I think it's one of the reasons you haven't seen him linked to Sean McDermott.
Yeah, they're not hiring. I like Sean. I liked him when he was here. I think he'll be a pretty good, decent head coach. I mean, it's hard to tell, but he certainly has done a nice job in Carolina working with Ron Rivera. But no, I don't think there's any chance in the world that he lands here for a lot of reasons. And one of which is that, like you said, who's he going to bring in? He's not going to bring in anybody he would hire as an offensive coordinator would have to be someone who's a position coach. No offensive coordinator would be allowed to leave to come. You know what I'm saying? It'd be a lateral move. So that you couldn't hire. He couldn't bring Mike Shula with him from Carolina because Carolina would say, no, you can't. You're not taking him. So it would be an unproven, unless he brought in some old guy, I don't know, somebody that's
John Gruden.
Oh yeah, Gruden's going to be Sean McDermott's offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it would almost have to be like what Todd Bowles did with the Jets last year, bringing in Chan Gailey.
Yeah, a guy like that. I don't even know if any of them are around. I mean, but again, no, I don't. I think anything could happen, and people could say no, and you wind up with a fallback option. But I think the Eagles' game plan is to hire an offensive-minded coach who specializes in quarterbacks.
Unfortunately, those don't grow on trees.
No, so Adam Gase and Dirk Cutter are one and one. I mean, they.
Well, all right. Let me ask you this because I know you know a little bit about Dirk Cutter. I don't know a ton about him, to be honest, and I'm guessing this is the other thing about the.
It's posted. I just put up on NJ.com.
Right, but the other thing about the head coach is all these fans have their favorites, and all of us have our favorites. But in reality, it's hard to know a lot about these guys. I mean, I wasn't researching Adam Gase the past 9 months. So for Dirk Cutter, What should people know about him?
How he was.
How he was. Yeah, how he was. That's a good point.
Dirk Cutter was a head coach in college. He's the guy that put Boise State on the map. Remember, nobody ever heard of Boise State, and then all of a sudden Boise State became like Boise State. He was the head coach of Boise State. He turned that in, and he did a real good job there, obviously. He went from there to Arizona State, where he did okay, over 500. He's been a coordinator for the Jaguars, the Falcons, Matt Ryan. A lot of Matt Ryan's success belongs, or it gets credited to Dirk Cutter. And then he went to Tampa this year, and he did a wonderful job with Jameis Winston, I thought.
So would you think it'd be a good hire?
Yes. I wanted him in 20. He was the guy I was pushing when they hired Chip Kelly in 2013, but he took his name out of it then, and the Falcons gave him a long-term extension to
that's right.
So I've always admired Dirk Cutter. And he plays he likes to get the ball downfield. He's a four wide, go deep. Let's run out of that sometimes, but he's a vertical guy.
Do you think his heart's open?
That I don't know. But I have seen pictures of him at Christmas parties.
Well, to me, he's a leading candidate then. I don't care what all these rumors say. To me, he's got it all, if you had it all together there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always, like I said, I've always admired him. I don't know him. I never met him, but I've interviewed him as an assistant coach with the Falcons. But it's not like he's my brother-in-law and I'm trying to get him a job. I just think he's pretty good.
So, Mark, you've been around these before, and Elliot, you were around, obviously, when Chip got hired here. There's a lot of names. Do you think this will be a very wide net, or is this just, because this is the first week, everyone's kind of associated with each job? But, I'm looking at a list here in front of me of, there's probably, I've written down 8 to 10, maybe 11 names that have been in some way associated with the Eagles over the last 3 or 4 days. Maybe not all of them get interviews, but it's a lot of names so far.
Their names being tossed around by guys like us and other people in the media. They're not all real. They're real names, but they're not real. And for instance, somebody threw out that the Giants have interest in Chip Kelly. No, they don't. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of names. How many are actually candidates? I would say half of the names that are on the list are actually candidates. And even Dirk Cutter. That was a media report, and we jumped on it, but the Eagles haven't said they're interviewing him yet. The only people that we know right now the Eagles have interest in are Pat Shurmur, Adam Gase, who was in
Deuce Staley.
Maybe. I think they want to keep him on staff. And is Doug Marrone, I think. Have they said that they're interviewing Doug Marrone?
It's been a report that they're trying to schedule an interview with him.
So Cutter might be next, but I'm just saying. Yeah, and I was told this by someone who I really trust too about how coaching, because I was saying that when Gase came in on Tuesday, lock the doors. If that's your guy, lock the door, pile money, do the old, like car dealer. You can't leave to go look at the what's it going to take to keep you here, and end it, and just don't let him go to Cleveland or Miami. And that's been done with players. During free agency, that happens all the time. A player is scheduled to go visit 3 teams. He goes to the first team. That team gives him what he wants, and he signs and cancels yet the other 2 interviews. But I was told by a person who's been through coaching searches on both ends of it, and said that teams like to talk to a lot of coaches just to get opinions, just to get feedback, just to get ideas. So the Eagles may interview some guys. They're probably not going to hire them, but they just want to hear what they have to say and what their opinions are and who their coordinators might be, and just to get ideas for the guy that they finally do hire.
So all things considered here with the Eagles and the way they're structured right now with Lurie, with Roseman, with that whole thing in the front office, to this roster the way it is, and really, without certainty at the quarterback position. Elliot, would this be a job you'd want if you were a coordinator? I think we all think they might have some little struggle here, maybe a big struggle to get the guy they want if another job is out there for them like Adam Gase. But, do you think you want the Eagles job right now? Is this an attractive job?
Like Mark said, there's only 32 out there in the world. So in that way, I guess, yes, you take the job. But if you're a younger guy who you think maybe in a year or two will still have an opportunity, there's plenty of reasons to be concerned about taking this job, as I mentioned. One, no quarterback, and there's no real slam dunk option out there in terms of, this isn't like last year if you're getting hired by the Titans or the Bucks, where you have a Jameis Winston or Mariota sitting right there. So in terms of quarterback, obviously that's a concern too. I mean, I think there's the problems with this leadership on this team in terms of DeMarco Murray, Jason Peters, Byron Maxwell. I mean, these are guys that turned the locker room on Chip. And I think if you're a head coach coming into that situation, you have issues on your hands in terms of this locker room. Then the other thing is the Howie factor. You're going to be forced to work with them. You don't really get to choose. I mean, Chip brought in his guy and Tom Gamble, and Howie had him fired. And so if you're a head coach, you're coming in here knowing Howie's running the show. It's going to be a collaborative approach, as Jeffrey said, which essentially means you're not going to have much of you're going to have a say, but in I read it as the head coach isn't going to have final say on a whole lot. So those three factors, I think. And the other one actually too is look how quickly Chip got the axe. I mean, if you're a head coach, you're coming in here, you're going to have to be better than a division title and 26 wins in 3 years, I guess, which is not an easy accomplishment as a new head coach. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to win soon. Obviously, working in Philadelphia, there's upside in the way that it's the biggest team in the city, and it's one of the premier franchises in terms of how the NFL views it. I think the Eagles are one of the better franchises in the league. So if you do well here, you'll have a chance to really make a name for yourself. But on the flip side, that comes a lot of that pressure. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, to be wary. If you're a young and up-and-coming candidate, there's a lot of reasons to be wary of taking this plunge too early. That being said, there's only 32 jobs out there. So clearly, if they were going to offer me $7 million, I would try my best. But I think there's a lot of reasons to be worried about how a new head coach will do in this situation.
You agree on that, Mark, that this is a job that, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's only 32 of these, but would you be weary if you were that first-time coach taking this job right now?
It would depend where I am both in my career and where I am literally whom I'm working. If I'm Adam Gase, I'm the Bears' offensive coordinator. All right? John Fox is my boy. I've been with him in Denver and Chicago. I don't think the Bears are winning a Super Bowl in the next couple of years either, right? So if this is my chance, I better take it because last year I had a bunch of interviews and didn't get anything. If I don't take anything this year, all of a sudden they might stop calling. And if the Bears, all right, I did wonders with Jay Cutler this year, but who's to say Jay Cutler doesn't turn back into Jay Cutler next year and throws 20 picks and the Bears go 4-12 again? That job now nobody's calling me. So that's a guy I think I might. If I'm Sean McDermott, and I'm just using him as an example, not that he would, like we said, he's probably not even on the Eagles list, but Sean McDermott can be a little more picky, I think. I think Carolina's defense is going to be good for a while. I don't think they're going away. So he might have better opportunities next year. I think people are going to keep him on the speed dial. So that's something to be there. Or now, if I'm that's two young guys. If I'm an older guy, if I'm Dirk Cutter, I'm 54. I've never been an NFL head coach. My timeline's running a little thin too, right? I mean, if I don't take one now, people are going to say, you know what, Dirk Cutter just doesn't want to be head coach. He's going to be an offensive coordinator his whole career. So I think it's where you are. And again, Tampa Bay's not winning a Super Bowl next year either. So even though I have a good young quarterback in Jameis Winston and things are getting better there, this might be the time to strike.
It might be, and he has that, and Cutter obviously did a good job there with Jameis Winston. How much do you guys think excitement matters here to Jeff Lurie, like what the fans think? I mean, look, he got rid of Chip, but 3 years ago, I'm looking at this list, I'm listening to you guys talk, and we're talking about these names, and Dirk Cutter, and we're talking about Doug Peterson, and all these guys, even Adam Gase. There's no one on this list, unless they pry away a former Super Bowl winner, that I think is going to excite really anybody. I mean, you may talk yourself into it, but it's not exciting. Like when they hired Chip Kelly, Elliot, it was exciting. People were really excited about that. I mean, that's kind of weird this time. Like there won't be that kind of excitement. Do you think that plays it all into who Lurie picks, or are he just going to try to find someone that is a good coach?
Well, because they're not going to find a better candidate than Chip. I mean, Chip's the best candidate out there right now, in my opinion. I mean, unless you include Sean Payton, and then you can certainly make an argument for Payton. But yeah, you're right. There's not going to be this town's not going to be riled up for the start of training camp. Well, this town will be because they always are, no matter who the head coach is. But in terms of, I don't think anybody's going to whoever they hire, no one's going to say, "Oh, they're going to the playoffs now." I mean, fans talk themselves into Sam Bradford, so maybe they will. But in terms of Adam Gase, I mean, Adam Gase seems to be the popular choice amongst the fans, and Sean McDermott to a certain degree. But I don't think there's going to be any level of excitement. Like, put it this way: the Eagles aren't opening on Monday Night Football this year, like they did when Chip got the job. Or 2 out of the 3 years when Chip was, you know what I mean? Like Chip brought excitement. He was one of the more exciting names in the NFL. you're never going to top the excitement level that
That's
Chip
good.
was.
Elliot, that's the good news. Every game's going to be 1 o'clock next year.
Yeah, exactly. I hope fans are excited for their one Thursday night appearance against the Jaguars this year.
Yeah, it'll be an East game. It'll be against the Giants.
Yeah. But in terms of how much Lurie will play that in, I mean, I think it'll. It's a good question. I mean, I like to think it wouldn't. But it's still business at the end of the day, and I think it will play a little bit of a factor in terms of, bringing in a guy that he thinks will be perceived well by the fans.
And when he hired Andy Reid, nobody knew who Andy Reid was. So I mean, I don't think that plays into it at all. I mean, it shouldn't either. But I mean, the most successful coach that Jeffrey Lurie's hired was Andy Reid, and he couldn't have been less exciting as a hire or as a head coach for that matter. He was one thing about it. You can say a lot of things about him. Exciting was never something you used to describe him. And his hire was like, I mean, when word got out that he was on the list and they entered, but I mean, he had no background. So I mean, everybody that we've mentioned today is more experienced and more qualified to be a head coach than Andy Reid was in 1999. Everyone. Am I wrong? Is there something?
No, you're right. Of course, maybe outside of Deuce Staley, they're all the same. Yeah, they're all coordinators.
Real, come on. Deuce is not. I don't know who's getting Eagles' job, but I can probably say today on Tuesday morning that Deuce Staley will not be the Eagles' head coach next.
I think it's a pretty fair guess, just based on everything we've heard.
I think he'll be on the staff. I think he will be on the new staff, and maybe even be offensive coordinator, but he will not be. He will not be the head coach.
All right, before we wrap this episode up and you guys go and continue to follow this trail and figure out where this next coach is going to be before next time we talk, and who knows, it might be another podcast or two before they actually hire someone. Each of you give me a name that intrigues you, whether or not you think they're the best candidate, but just intrigues you based on what we heard, and ultimately, how long do you think this is going to take? Just a guess. Is this going to be a short type of thing, or is this going to be a longer process for the Eagles to find this next head coach? Elliot, we'll go to you, and then Mark. A name that intrigues you, and then just a guess on, will this take a while, or are we going to have maybe another emergency podcast soon?
Well, trying to figure out what this team's going to do is basically impossible after firing Chip and the manner they did it. So in terms of guessing how long this is going to take, I mean, that's a tough one. But I think it's going to be a bit of a longer search. As Mark said, teams like to talk to a lot of head coaches and get a lot of different ideas. One guy that intrigues me, I'm not exactly sure why, but for some reason, is Jim Mora Jr. With UCLA. I think he has the NFL head coaching experience from before. He went back to college and did well there. He's a proven, he did well in Atlanta, getting them to the championship game. So he's a guy I think would be of interest to them and would check off a lot of the boxes. And he also seems like a player's coach. So I think that would be a interesting interview by them just to see how he thinks. And he did good with Michael Vick back in Atlanta. So I think that'd be an interesting option for them.
I like that one. I haven't thought of him, but obviously following his career, he's done a lot of different things. How about you, Mark?
Well, he took my guy, but
boom.
That's right. He is intriguing. I mean, I've been a Gase guy from the beginning, so I'll stick with him. And I think in terms of how long it takes, I think it depends on if Adam Gase really is their guy, and that's the guy they want. It can get done quickly because you interview him on Tuesday. You maybe can't stop him from going to talk to Miami and Cleveland. But
maybe he realizes what a wreck they are.
Well, Miami and Cleveland aren't exactly, Cleveland, come on. You can't take –
No, I'm saying he realizes what a wreck the Dolphins are.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Right, yeah.
You're right. Yeah, so, I mean, of those three, the Eagles might be the best of the three. So if Gase is the guy, you could have this done by early next week, at the end of this week maybe. I mean, if he's the guy.
The Senior Bowl is January 25th. I would think they have a guy in place by then.
But here's the flip side. Unless they're waiting for somebody in the play, unless they really do want to interview Doug Peterson, and then they have to wait for Kansas City to lose, or they really want to interview, somebody on Arizona staff, or somebody on Seattle staff, or somebody on New England staff. I mean, if that's the case. But I'm going to hold Jeffrey Lurie to his word when he said the reason he fired Chip on Tuesday prior to the game as opposed to waiting to Black Monday like everybody else was to get a head start, to get a jump start, to get things going. Well, if you want a head start, that means you tend to think you want to move quickly, right?
That would make sense, and that would give them, maybe a little bit of a heads up on everybody else. And just before we wrap this up, I'm looking at Jim Mora's credentials here, and really what that means, I'm just on his Wikipedia page. But I find it's fascinating, Elliot, as you mentioned him, and I looked at his career record. So he was fired after 3 years with the Falcons. He did coach 1 year later on with the Seahawks before going back to college. But 3 years with the Falcons, he has virtually an identical resume to Chip in those 3 years. He won 11 games his first year. Chip won 10, but he won the NFC South that year, made the playoffs. Then they missed the next 2 years. They went 7-9 his third year after big expectations, and his career record there was 26-22, and they canned him. Obviously, Chip was 26-21, and then his team finished 7-9. So it's like the same. That's so weird. It's like the same thing.
He did win a playoff game.
He did. They had a bye, and they won a game, and then they lost to the Eagles in the title game.
In Seattle, he was 8-8 in Seattle.
He was 5-11 his 1 year,
Never mind. Okay.
and then back to UCLA, and he's been there since. I haven't heard that name yet, but there he is, and now he's part of this podcast.
You don't read my post, Joe.
I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't read that one yet. Because we got so many up.
I had him listed on my original candidates.
Well, I think he's a good one. I think he's an interesting one. There's so many we'll keep hearing about. You guys will keep reporting on, and we'll talk again next week unless we have big news to talk about. And then we'll do another, I guess, emergency podcast.
We should have a poll on what day. Everybody pick a day as to when, what day they're going to hire someone.
I'll go next week sometime. I think it's going to happen in next week.
Hey, don't give me that. Can't be that wide.
All right, I'll go January. Let's say the 5th. I'll go January 14th, next Thursday.
I was going to say the 13th.
All right, I'll take the 12th, a week from today.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. What's on the line here?
We all think early. How about that? No, I'm going to say February 9th.
That'll be a long month.
That'd be a lot of us to try to speculate on.
I want it over tomorrow.
Well, at some point here, it's going to be over, and the Eagles will have their next head coach. And if we don't have it before next week, we will talk to you then on the No-Huddle Show. Elliot, as always, thanks for doing this.
No problem. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Joe.
And thanks to all of you for listening to episode 24 of the No-Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast right here on NJ.com. We'll be back soon, hopefully, and maybe with a new coach to talk about with the Philadelphia Eagles.